Hello, and welcome to Chapter 5 of the Wink Getting Started series entitled Inventory Adjustments and Audits. In this video, we're going to review the process for reprinting barcodes, adjusting inventory of frames, finding unprinted barcodes, returning frames to suppliers, and performing an inventory audit. You should have by now watched Chapter 4 of our series entitled Adding Frames to Your Inventory. In that video, we reviewed the process for entering an opening balance of frame inventory in Wink. We also reviewed the process for receiving new frames from suppliers as regular inventory. Now then, the first step in Chapter 5 is Step 21, reprint a barcode for a frame. Let me show you how to do that. Throughout your usage of Wink, it may occasionally be necessary to reprint a barcode label for a frame. Reprinting a barcode does not increase your inventory count or your inventory value. So if you ever print a barcode and it doesn't print properly, or if you cut a label off a frame to sell it to a patient, but then you have to put it back on because the patient changed his mind, then you can simply reprint the barcode label without affecting your inventory quantity or value. Now then, let's say that one of your labels doesn't print properly, and you would like to reprint it. Here's how you do that. To begin, click on Reprint Barcodes. Next, simply scan the barcode that didn't print properly, like this. And there you have it. If you don't have a barcode scanner, you can type the serial number which appears on that barcode. Serial numbers always begin with an S for serial. So in this case, my serial number is S04. Enter. And there you have it. Now to print it, simply click on Print. And print. And there you have it. Your barcode should have reprinted. You can now remove that barcode from the printer, hang it off the temple of the frame, and put your frame in the display case for sale to patients. The method just described ensures that you never have more than one active serial number for any one frame in your store. Essentially, by printing that second serial number as I just did, Wink deactivates the first serial number that didn't print properly. Now let's say that you find a frame in your display case that doesn't have a label on it, but you're sure that you originally placed one on it when you first received it a few weeks ago. Should that happen, you will again want to reprint your barcode, but this time you don't have the original barcode in your hand. If that happens, you're going to do this. Again, click on Reprint Barcodes. Next, since you don't know the barcode serial number, click on this link below, which reads, if you're not sure what your barcode serial number is, click here to generate a brand new one. Now, in this field, type the model number for the frame with the missing barcode. And press Enter. What appears is a list of all frames in your inventory with that particular model number. Simply double-click on the one you wish to reprint. This adds it to this first screen. Now, just as before, click on Print. And print. Now, because I did that last search by model number instead of by serial number, it's likely that Wink will not deactivate that first serial number, as it did for the first frame whose barcode was reprinted using the serial number as a reference point. Therefore, I likely now have two active serial numbers for this second frame. But don't worry, Wink will adjust for that reality when we do an inventory audit. Inventory audits will be reviewed in about 15 minutes. And there you have it. That's how and why you will occasionally reprint barcode labels for your frames. The next step in the Getting Started process is step number 22, adjust frame inventory. Inventory adjustments will be required on occasion to adjust for stolen or broken frames. Inventory adjustments may also be required to modify your inventory count after an inventory audit. Please note, unlike reprinting a barcode, which has no impact on inventory quantity or inventory value, inventory adjustments have a direct impact on both inventory quantity and inventory value. Inventory value is adjusted using the first-in, first-out inventory costing model, also known as the FIFO inventory costing model. If you're not familiar with that term, your accountant should be. It's the costing method recommended by QuickBooks, And as you know, Wink is integrated with QuickBooks, Simply Accounting, Wave, and Xero accounting softwares. So it's the method Wink uses as well. Now then, here is the process for performing an inventory adjustment. For the sake of argument, let's pretend you dropped a frame on the floor and it broke. If that happens, you'll need to adjust your inventory downwards, like this. To begin, click on Adjust Inventory. Next, select Frames. Now in this first field, type the model number for the frame whose inventory count needs to be adjusted, and press Enter. Just as before, if you have a number of frames available in your database with that same model number, they will appear here like this. Simply double-click on the one you wish to adjust. Next, click on the drop-down list beneath the action title and select Remove. Now, select the quantity to be removed from inventory, 1, and enter a comment, broken frame. And that's it. All you need to do now is click on Save. And there you have it. This inventory adjustment has been completed. This frame has been removed from my store's inventory. I can now click on Close. Okay, now let's pretend that your lab tech was actually able to repair that broken frame. If so, you'll need to adjust your inventory upwards, like this. Again, click on Adjust Inventory. Again, select Frames. Again, in the Find Product field, enter the model number for the frame you wish to add to your inventory, and press Enter. As you can see, this product is no longer in my inventory, but it still exists as a product in my database. Therefore, to see products which are not in my inventory, but which exist in my store's database, I'll click here. Here are those frames. This is the frame which I would like to add back to my inventory. So I can select it and click on Select, or I can double click, just like that. Now, under Action, I'll say Add. Quantity to be added, 1. If you know the value of this frame to be added, you can enter that value here. If not, don't worry, it will be added later. Next, enter a comment to explain what you've just done. And click on Save. And there you have it. The frame has been added back to my store's inventory. I can now click on Close. The last type of inventory adjustment to do is called a reset. Resetting your inventory quantity is something you would do immediately after an inventory audit. You may remember from Chapter 4 that I ordered and received 5 Timberland frames from my supplier. Well, for argument's sake, let's assume that I do an inventory count and I only find 4. In a situation like that, I would want to reset my quantity of frames by doing this. Again, click on Adjust Inventory. Again, select Frames. Now, type the model number for the frame in question and press Enter. Now, as you can see, Wink originally thought that there were actually 5 of this frame in my store. However, after doing an inventory count, I find that there's only 4. So I'll double click on it, and now I'll set my quantity to 4. I'll enter a comment to explain, and I'll click on Save. And there you have it. That's how you can reset the quantity of a frame in your inventory. Now I'll click on Close. For further information regarding the difference between resetting inventory quantities as opposed to simply adjusting inventory up or down, go to downloadwink.com, click on Support, and type Reset Inventory in the question prompt. There you will find a thorough explanation of the difference between the two. For the time being, just remember that the only time you'll ever reset your inventory will be immediately after an inventory audit. All other times, you'll only ever adjust it up or down, and most often, only to accommodate for data entry errors, breakage, or theft. Okay, so that's how you can do frame inventory adjustments. The next step in the Getting Started series is step number 23, finding unprinted barcodes. Here's how you do that. If you've decided to barcode your frames, then we strongly recommend that you be diligent in printing and affixing those labels to your frames immediately after the items are added to your Wink inventory. Remember that the process by which Wink tracks each frame in your store is directly related to the printing of those barcode labels. So for that process to work, you must be diligent. Nevertheless, it's possible that you will on occasion enter new inventory from a supplier in Wink and forget to print the barcode labels. Alternatively, if you decided to enter all of your inventory opening balance manually, in other words option C from Chapter 4, then again you may forget to print a barcode or two from time to time. For that reason, we've implemented the Find Unprinted Barcode solution. Here's how it works. To begin, click on Find Unprinted Barcodes. The system will now find all barcodes which have not been printed. If you watched Chapter 4, you'll remember that when I originally added this Wink 99 frame to my inventory as an opening balance, I never actually printed the barcode for it. For that reason, it's appearing here in this list. To print it now, simply click on Save and Print. But before we click on Save and Print, allow me to explain what we mean by Save and Print. The Save function will actually save whether this barcode serial number for this frame should be active or not. As you can see, I can right-click on this and select to deactivate this barcode. Of course, I don't want to do that. I can also, to deactivate it, uncheck, just like that. I'm going to leave it checked for now. So saving refers to activating or to deactivating barcode serial numbers. Of course, printing refers to whether the item should be printed or not. As both are checked, when I click on Save and Print, Wink will save this barcode as an active barcode and will print it from my Datamax label printer, just like this. And click on Print. And there you have it. Essentially, we recommend that you click on this button once or twice per month as a precautionary measure. If you regularly find unprinted barcodes, then you may have many frames that either never made it into a display case or have simply gone missing. Both of these could either be cause for concern or perhaps highlight a requirement for more thorough employee training. And there you have it. That's how you find unprinted barcodes. The next step in the Getting Started series is step number 24, returning frames to a supplier. Here's how you do that. In Chapter 4, we reviewed the process for receiving frames from a supplier. Well, the process for returning frames to a supplier is nearly identical to that. When receiving inventory from a supplier, you are instructed to recreate your supplier's invoice in Wink. Well, when returning products to a supplier, you're going to recreate your supplier's Return Merchandise Authorization, also known as an RMA or RA document. Again, to begin, click on Product Received Transfer. Next, click on New, because we're going to recreate a new RMA. Now, if you've been barcoding your frames, then the process for returning frames is very easy. Essentially, all you need to do is scan the barcode for the frame you wish to return, like this. Scan the next one, like this. And the next one, just like this. Now that you're done, enter your RMA number in this field. Or, if you don't have an RA number, type RMA dash today's date. The objective is to create something unique, because remember that Wink will not allow you to have two identical RA numbers for the same supplier. And that's it. You're done. All you need to do now is save this file, and perhaps also print it as a sort of packing slip for items you return to your supplier. But before I do that, let me show you what this process looks like if you're not barcoding your frames. Okay, here we go again. Now if you're barcoding your frames, the first thing to do was to scan a barcode and let Wink do the rest. If, however, you're not barcoding your frames, then the first thing to do is to select your supplier. You can type and select. Next, select your account number. Next, enter your RMA number. Or if you don't know it, simply type RMA dash today's date. Next, place your cursor in the Enter Product Name field. Now, as you should be used to doing by now, type the model number for your frame and press Enter. Now, select the one you wish to return and click on Select. By default, the system will put a positive, a +1 value. You would now need to change that to be a -1. And press Tab. Next, enter your next model number. And press Enter. Again, select the one you wish to return to the supplier and click Select. Again, change the value from +1 to -1 and press Tab to move to the next cell. Finally, enter the last frame to be returned to your supplier and press Enter. Again, you can select it and click on Select, or you can double click. Again, change the value from +1 to -1 and press Tab to move to the next cell. Okay, now that I'm done entering all the frames to be returned to my supplier, I click on Save. Just as with receiving inventory in Chapter 4, your inventory count remains unchanged until you click on Save. By clicking on Save, I'm removing these frames from my inventory. Next, you'll most likely want to print a receipt of this shipment to your supplier. To do that, just click on Print. Now all you need to do is put these frames in a box with that printout and send it to your supplier. And there you have it. That's how you return frames to a supplier. The last item to review in Chapter 5 is Step 25, Perform an Inventory Audit. Let me show you how to do that now. There are two ways to perform an inventory audit. Essentially, it comes down to whether you're placing labels on your frames or not. If you are, then an inventory audit could take an hour or less. If you're not, then the process will certainly be much longer. Here is the process for performing an inventory audit when you're not labeling your frames with barcodes. To begin, click on Reports. Next, select Inventory, Current Inventory, Frames, and click. Now, click on Generate. Now, move ahead to page 3 and zoom in. And here's my report. Now, all you need to do is click on the print icon at the top left here, and with your printouts in your hand, walk around your store and cross off all the frames you find. And that's it. You're done. Now, without a doubt, that process is a lot easier to explain than it is to actually implement, because it will likely take you a few days to count your entire store, especially if you carry a couple thousand frames in inventory. Furthermore, you're going to have to keep a separate accounting of everything that is sold between the time you first printed this report and the time you finished counting the inventory. Nevertheless, it's a workable solution if you don't want to barcode your frames. Now, if your frames are barcoded, then the inventory audit process is extremely fast and precise. It's also very intelligent because it takes into account the sales you make between the time you begin the audit and the time you complete it. So here's how you do that. To begin, click on Inventory Audit. Next, highlight Serial Number and Frames, and click. Now walk around your store and scan every barcode label you find on a frame. As this is a demo, I've only got a few dozen to scan, so I'll just do that now. Okay, I've finished scanning all my barcodes, but I'm going to scan this last barcode a second time, and notice what happens when I do. Notice how Wink caught that error. Now this will only happen if you lose concentration during the scanning process and actually scan the same frame twice. Nevertheless, you might want to have a look at your computer a few times during the scanning process to see if this ever happens. But don't worry, if it ever does, you have nothing to worry about, because Wink knows what to do with your double scan. Still though, it's worth keeping an eye on. Okay, so now that I'm done scanning all my barcodes, I just click on Done. Wink is now preparing my inventory audit report. Depending on the number of frames in your store, this could take a minute or so, so be patient. Now then, before we begin analyzing this report, it's important to highlight one very important fact which really sets Wink inventory management ahead of all others. Every barcode or serial number in Wink is unique. Unlike your grocery store where the UPC barcode on every can of tomatoes is exactly the same, every Wink serial number is entirely unique. That's what gives Wink the ability to track every single frame you own from the moment you buy it to the moment it's sold. As you can imagine, we've built it this way because, unlike your average can of tomatoes, the average value of a frame in your store is probably in the $50 to $100 range. That's why it's so important to affix labels to your frames immediately after you print them, because those labels are the method by which Wink will track every individual frame in your store. Now logically, for the most part, there will always be a one-to-one relationship between frames and serial numbers. So, you buy a frame from a supplier, you hang a label off of it in your store, and you only remove that label when you're delivering the frame to the patient. Nevertheless, earlier we showed you how to reprint barcode labels, and depending on the method you choose for reprinting that label, you may end up having two active serial numbers for the same frame in your database. We also showed you that it's possible to scan the same barcode twice. Also, when returning frames to your supplier, if you've chosen to do so by entering model numbers instead of scanning barcodes, then again you're likely to have active serial numbers in the system, even though the inventory has been returned to the supplier. So given those three and many other possible scenarios, it's possible that your data will not balance perfectly. But fear not, we've thought of everything, and Wink's intelligent and intuitive design makes the inventory audit process very easy to understand and implement. Now then, I'm going to zoom into this report for you. This is your inventory audit report. It shows in a table format the expected inventory. In other words, how many of each frame you're supposed to have in inventory. The expected serial numbers. In other words, how many active serial numbers, or barcodes, you've printed out for each frame. The actual serial numbers. In other words, how many serial numbers, or barcodes, you just scanned. The extra serial numbers. In other words, how many extra serial numbers were found during the scanning process. The missing serial numbers. In other words, how many serial numbers seem to have gone missing. And finally, Wink's conclusion, based on the preceding 5 columns. Now there are 3 possible conclusions. The first is perfect, which means that what you were supposed to scan and what you actually scanned are all equal, and there are no extra or missing serial numbers. Here are some examples of that situation. Moving to the bottom of this window now, I have totals for each of my columns. So another measurable is whether the total expected inventory matches the total serial numbers scanned. This will help you determine whether your total inventory is good or not. In my case, I have a difference of 4 between the expected inventory and the actual serial numbers scanned. That represents about a 10% difference. Okay, back to the top now. A second possible conclusion is okay. This means that your expected inventory and the number of serial numbers you just scanned matches perfectly, but something else is off. We say that this is okay because at the end of the day, what matters most is that you have the right number of frames in your store, and a missing or extra serial number is likely something you can just ignore. For example, earlier I showed you how to return frames to a supplier. The frames we returned was this Ralph Lauren frame, this Vogue frame, and this Persol frame. In all three cases, you'll notice that the conclusion is okay. That's because the expected inventory for each of them is 1. The expected serial numbers, however, is 2, because when we returned those frames, we didn't enter a serial number, we entered the model number of the frame, so Wink wasn't sure which serial number should be deactivated. Nevertheless, the actual serial number scanned always matches the expected inventory, and for that reason, Wink's conclusion is okay. Okay, moving on now. Remember earlier when I reprinted those barcodes? Well, when you reprint a barcode using the serial number as a reference point, Wink deactivates the old barcode and activates the new one, resulting in a conclusion of perfect, as was the case for this diesel frame. If, however, you reprint a barcode and you don't use the serial number as a reference point, as we did for this diesel frame, then Wink's conclusion will likely be okay, because the expected inventory and the actual serial numbers match. But as far as Wink is concerned, there's a second active barcode somewhere. Like I said, if you see a conclusion of okay, it means that your expected inventory and the number of barcodes scanned actually match. So the little data entry errors are more likely an issue of employee training rather than theft or malfeasance. The final conclusion, however, is discrepancy. This means that your expected inventory does not match the number of serial numbers you just scanned. This often means that a frame has gone missing. There are many different reasons for a discrepancy. We'll show you how to get to the bottom of them in a moment. But please note that we've listed as many as we could on our website at www.downloadwink.com. To view the list in question, click on Support and type Inventory Management Conclusions. Then follow your on-screen instructions. Now there are many ways to reconcile and adjust your inventory audit. We first recommend adjusting all the OKs. Like we said, a conclusion of OK means that your expected inventory and the actual serial numbers that you scanned match, but something else is off. This is usually a small data entry error, or a situation where you just reprinted a barcode. So you can adjust all of this very easily, like this. When I click on this button, Wink will deactivate all the extra barcode serial numbers it found. Wink will also make a series of other minor adjustments that were likely the result of data entry errors on your behalf. So here we go. Are you sure you want to adjust all the inventory? This action is not reversible. Click Yes. And there you go. Now then, as you can see, for the most part, I only have a very few discrepancies. The majority of what remains is perfect. If I only want to see my discrepancies, I can select Show Discrepancies Only. Now there are a total of 4 frames for which the expected inventory does not match the actual serial numbers scanned. Let's start with this first one. Now, just as before, you may at your discretion choose to automatically adjust all of your discrepancies, like this. Select all and adjust. And Wink will make all the necessary adjustments so as to reflect that these frames are no longer in your store. Alternatively, you can investigate them individually by selecting the first one, right-clicking, and viewing the product history. Now, I can see that I actually received this frame. I'll select it, right-click, and open. And I can see here that on this particular invoice where this frame appears, there's actually 2 other frames. In total, I have a Fendi, a Hugo Boss, and a Tommy Hilfiger. Interestingly enough, I have a Fendi, a Hilfiger, and a Hugo Boss frame here as well. So one possible conclusion could be that somebody simply never printed the barcodes for these frames. At this point, we'd recommend that you walk over to where you keep these frames to see if they're truly in your inventory or not, and make the necessary adjustments. I'm going to assume that they are in my inventory, so I'm going to right-click, Adjust Barcodes, Generate Missing Barcodes, and Save and Print. And print. Wonderful. Let's do that again. Click on the next frame. Right-click, Adjust Barcodes. Generate Missing Barcodes. Save and Print. And print. Last, select it, right-click, Adjust Barcodes. Generate Missing Barcodes. Save and print. And print. Now you wouldn't necessarily be able to do this for every single discrepancy. It just so happens that for these first 3 frames, I noticed that the frames are actually in my store, and likely the reason why I was not able to scan a barcode is because no one put the barcodes on the frames. So I was able to reprint it. Now then, this last frame is a little bit different. As you can see with this last frame, 1 is expected to be an inventory. There's also 1 expected serial number, and yet I never scanned any. This means that there's a serial number missing. At this point, again, we recommend you walk over to your store to wherever you would keep this particular frame. In this case, right now, we're going to assume that this frame has gone missing. Therefore, an adjustment needs to be made. Again, right-click. This time, click on Inventory Adjustment. Now, this frame has been selected. I'm going to set my quantity for this to be 0. And I'll enter a comment. And click on Save. And there you have it. The adjustment has been made. At this point, I could refresh this list, like this. Show all, and there you have it. That's how you do an inventory audit. Remember that you can get more information on this process at downloadwink.com. Just click on the Support tab and type Inventory Management Conclusions for further information. This now concludes Chapter 5 of our Getting Started series. In this chapter, we reviewed the process for reprinting barcodes, adjusting inventory, returning frames to suppliers, and performing an inventory audit. In Chapter 6 of our series, we'll be reviewing the process for creating your spectacle lens library. That is possibly one of the most important videos in the Getting Started series, so we hope you'll join us for that. On behalf of Wink, I want to thank you for watching our video, and I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos just like it. Thanks again. Have a great day. Was this video helpful? Are you enjoying Wink? Spread the word. Share Wink on your social media page.